defines a generation. Music is a soundtrack of revolution. Music is a soundtrack of movement. Music is a soundtrack of cause. There is an intersection of politics and pop culture that you didn't even know existed. There's some boy, some girl sitting in a cubicle along K Street, somewhere in DC. A boy, a girl sitting in a cubicle along a hill with a Capitol with a dome who has single-handedly decided what you wore today. Whoa.
Mike Muse is an industrial engineer, a music executive, a political architect. He breaks down the intersection of politics and pop culture. This is the Mike Muse Show.
What's happening, America? It is me, Mike Muse, and I am so excited to be back with you again for the next episode of the Mike Muse Show. I mean, what a time we are having. I cannot thank you enough for all the tweets I received from our last episode. You guys really got into the conversation. I'm so thankful you guys are enjoying this journey and enjoying the discourse that we're having. As always, you know I love a great two-way conversation, a great two-way dialogue, and always feel free to hit me up on Twitter at IAMMIKEMUSE. That's M-U as in Sam E. And hit us up here at Insight, and that's that's SXM Insight. That way we can get involved in this dialogue and we can keep the conversation going throughout the hour and then after the show, because man, do I have a good time today ahead for you guys who are tuned in today. It is an exciting time in sports. I mean, my gosh, we just saw the big championship game between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. I mean, I'm a King James fan all day, so I'm slightly disappointed. J.R. Smith, I'm still feeling some kind of way about you right now. We just are coming off the Preakness with Justify, so we're having a great time with that. And of course, this week coming up, we have the NBA draft as well as the NHL draft, and so it is a busy time for sports. And what makes this conversation interesting as we begin to intersect this politics and political discourse in it is because the Supreme Court has decided to get involved in this. Yeah, that's right, man. As you guys are familiar, the Supreme Court recently has ruled that for sports betting to be legal in the states now. Can you imagine all those times that we've been doing our fantasy football leagues and we've been betting with our friends in our house, in our office, you know, hey, I bet you $5 that the Cavs win, or I bet you $5 that the Warriors win. Now it can actually become legalized within the state. And let me tell you, New Jersey is primed and ready. New Jersey, what is it with you guys being the first one is to want to make sure you guys can do this betting first on sports? And so I'm definitely going to talk to New Jersey in a second here. But what makes it so fascinating, because it's absolutely opened up the floodgates of really what is possible. And so before we dig in, I'm going to give you some context just in terms of what the Supreme Court actually do. They ruled on this law called the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. And New Jersey filed this lawsuit against the Supreme Court. And they said that it violated the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. They said because it illegally empowered the federal government to order certain states to take specific action to disallow sports and gambling. And so they said now that this sports doesn't mean that it's illegal to gamble throughout the entire states. But what it does is says it allows the states the opportunity to decide for themselves whether or not that there should be gambling within the states. And let me tell you, the states are already going for it. Just like I said before, we have New Jersey, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, you're up, Massachusetts, you're up, and a slew of other states. California, I'm going to come back to you a little bit later on the show and tell you some of the challenges you guys are ahead of you. I know what you're thinking. You know, we're all in this entrepreneurship state, and so now we're wondering right now is how can I profit or engage in this business? How can I create possibly my own online betting system? And we're not quite there yet. There are some laws that may prohibit you from actually participating in the online, depending upon which states that you're trying to do the commerce in, that you'll be able to place the online bets. And also you may be thinking, if I live in New Jersey, if I live in Pennsylvania, if I live in West Virginia, if I live in New York, now might be a good time to open up my small mom and pop shop to do betting. Well, there's some challenges when it comes to that, because some of the states are restricting the licenses and the permits that allow for individuals to open up these gambling houses, if you will, for sports betting. But you know what's so interesting, man, is that do you guys realize how long gambling and sports have been connected within our American democracy? This goes back to the 13 original colonies, people. Back for the War of Independence started, our Continental Congress voted a $10 million lottery to finance the war. And the lotteries remained popular until the 19th centuries. Can you imagine all those mega millions that we're thinking about? It actually started started during the 13 colonies actually to finance the war. And then we went on further with horse racing. Horse racing was essentially the only sport that was allowed for votes to take place within the United States. And I mean, first up was the Belmont Stakes, and then we saw the Preakness, and then of course the Crown Jewel, which is the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs, and that began in 1875 when we were allowed to bet within horses. And then the slot machines came along, people at the turn of the 19th century. But when the rubber began to meet the road is in 1919 with the black box scandal, and that's in Major League Baseball, when 8 members of the highly favored Chicago White Sox were accused intentionally of throwing the World Series game against the Cincinnati Reds, that they took 10,000 bribes apiece in order to throw that. As a result, people, that's when the hammer came down, and that's when the states decided to shut all forms of variations of gambling down. And since then, the only state that allowed it to happen was Las Vegas in 1949 to really get their casino going. And it was really in order to get the tourism going. And it was really started by this infamous mobster, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. What a name, right? Who helped finance the Flamingo Hotel and Casino and other properties. And so since then, man, people have not been able to bet on sports at all. And there's some good reasons for that. The one would say, does it impact the integrity of the game, as we witnessed with the black box sox scandal? Does it encourage amateur athletes in order to throw games, in order to gain money, since they're not the ones who are making the major league bucks? And I couldn't think of a better person to really have this discourse with me than Joe Dumars, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Dumars is a 2-time NBA champion. He's also the president, a one-time president of the Detroit Pistons, who saw that team go on to a championship. And currently now, Joe is a president of the basketball division for the ISE agency. And I couldn't think of a better person today to really lead me in that conversation from a sports and athletic perspective than my good friend and champion, Joe Dumars. What's happening, Joe?
Hey, Mike, what's up, man? Good to talk to you.
Yeah, no, it's great to talk with you too, man. This is a special week ahead for you. It's a big NBA draft week for you, right?
Yeah, it's a big week. It's an exciting week for a lot of young guys. We have about 10 guys here we signed at ISE, and it should be an exciting week for those guys. I understand exactly how they're feeling this week.
Can you tell us, what is that feeling like? I mean, the draft is going to be on Thursday, so today is Monday. Like, are nerves sitting in? Are butterflies? Is there anticipation? Do some of the players already know kind of possibly where they may go and which teams?
All the above, except for the players knowing where they're going to go. That's what makes it so nerve-wracking for a young guy. You know, if you're 19, 20, 21 years old, Mike, and the NBA draft has been your lifelong dream, and the week is here, and you have no idea what's going to happen, that creates butterflies and nerves and all of those things. So those guys are, they're nervous and uptight right now, but as of Thursday night, it'll be over, and each of these guys will kind of know where their future lies.
Joe, we're talking about it from the player's perspective in terms of the athlete possibly being drafted, right? But you have such a unique perspective because you were once that player, but then you were also president of Detroit Pistons operations, and so you had a hand at the other side of the table in order of selecting players. So as a representative of a front office, if you will, what is normally the front office thinking during this time period as they begin to make their selections? Do you guys normally have your selections made during this time period, or is it sometimes just a midnight call?
What you have is your first choice, second choice, third choice at this point. And, obviously you have your first choice of who you'd like to draft, Mike, but, let's say somebody that, takes him right in front of you. You're picking 7th or 8th and the guy goes 4th. You slide down to the second choice. And so what teams are doing right now is they're firming up their probably top 3 to 5 choices of who they'd like to take at whatever position they're drafting. So, you can have one guy that you like, Mike, but you better have 2, 3, 4 guys lined up because anything can happen on the draft night.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely certain, man. Well, Joe, I just wish you guys luck, man, and cheers to
Yeah,
your guys that you guys have with the ISC
thank you.
agency, man. I'm rooting for you that you guys get the spots that you guys like. But with that being said, Joe, when it comes to amateur athletes and in particular
Hmm.
collegiate athletes, and we've seen that the NCAA isn't happy with this ruling that the Supreme Court has passed down. We've also seen from different, the official agencies from the league that they're not excited for this ruling that is now allowed for legalizing sports betting. In your perspective, do you believe that amateur athletes may be more prone to be susceptible to bribery? And is that something that we should be thinking about as consumers of the sport and as fans of the sport now that the amateur sport and the NCAA could be compromised at this? Or is this putting our skis too far ahead of us now at this point?
I think they're a little bit too far ahead, Mike, because look, if you're truly not predisposed to going down that dark road, then because it's become legal does not entice you to go down that road. I think if you're predisposed to do that, Mike, you're going to get involved with it, whether it's legal or not. So I don't really see athletes getting involved with something like this. If you're truly an athlete that's trying to reach your goals, Mike,
Yes.
man, I just don't see you risking everything for going down this road. That's just not a good road to go down.
As we begin, Joe, to look at March Madness, and I'm really kind of just zoning in on college sports particularly because this is something that you are currently involved in, especially this week. We see when we fill out our brackets, right, and we have like these office pools, and we have some may have money involved in their office pools, and some may just do it just for fun. We have different .com sites that actually promote these pools where you can enter a sweepstakes and win a lot of money if you select right, and it really brings the fans in and for that whole March Madness run, right, and because you have something there, right? You have something that's riding on it. You have some type of personal connection to it. Do you believe with the legalization of sports betting, do you believe now that more fans will be able to have more of that connection and kind of stay engaged throughout the season of said sport? Because right now we kind of watch sports during particular time periods now, but with the betting, do you think that will encourage season-long participation?
With some people, it will, Mike. The guys who like to bet on these pools and different things like that, it may prompt them to get more involved with betting in terms of going through the regular season, Mike. But once again, like I said, I don't think it's going to push people into this who really aren't into this at all in the first place. I think it's for the people who are really into gambling, Mike. It may open, up more things for them to get involved. But if you're not, I just don't see how this is going to pull you into the sport. Just in terms of gambling, I don't see it working like that. I really don't.
Yeah, you are. Your point of view that you have, Joe, really kind of counters why a lot of individuals have been hesitant to actually legalize sports betting within the state system, in particular of the fear of the compromise. We saw the different leagues and commissions have come up pretty strongly with this kind of thought in mind in terms of the compromising of the sport. Do you see any advantages, Joe, in terms of having sports gambling as part of our national narrative now? Is there a chance for owners of teams now to have expand their participation when it comes to creating more revenue for their teams?
I don't know how that will work. I've read about that, Mike, and when this ruling came down, I went back and read a lot of literature about this, and I saw what that was being talked about in terms of more revenue. I'm not sure about that, Mike. That could be a slippery slope going down with ownership getting involved with that. But I do think, Mike, that more transparency and regulation in something like this, if you're going to do that, to have complete transparency and regulations in place could help it. You want to get this type of stuff out of the dark alleys and you know what I mean, Mike?
Yeah.
Like you got to get this out in the open, and it has to be open for everyone to see and understand exactly what's happening with this. Of course, anything can happen in this, Mike, but like I said, I'd be surprised if you see an influx of athletes getting involved in gambling or anything like that, Mike. I would be surprised.
Joe, I like where you went in terms of bringing it from the dark into the light, because we oftentimes find that when you try and restrict something or you keep things in the dark and you ignore it, it actually creates a bigger problem in the long run from you versus actually just bringing it to the forefront, and then we can figure out ways to legally, through the transparency aspect of it, in order to make it equitable for everyone involved so that the sport doesn't get compromised. Joe, as a player, was this ever part of the conversation that you guys had in the locker room? Was there ever any of this type of discourse that ever was had when it comes to gambling?
Never. That's why I'm responding like I am, Mike, because this is something that's like never talked about in terms of our locker rooms that I've been in, either as a player or in the front office. I've never heard this conversation come up about the temptations of gambling on a game. Like I've never ever sat around with guys and this came up. So I guess that's why I don't want to sound naive, like I don't understand what could happen, because we know anything can happen, Mike. But I'm just saying from a personal experience, Mike, this has never been a conversation for guys to sit around and talk about.
Well, the reason why I'm glad that you're holding tight to your position, Joe, is because I don't like to formulate an opinion before I have a conversation with my guest. I like to be open because I believe it allows the conversation to move forward. And so now I was curating this discussion, I wanted to make sure I didn't form an opinion yet. But as I am listening to you, as we have our next guest coming up who represents, the state legislature of New Jersey, and we have another individual coming up who represents the gaming industry within Nevada and Las Vegas, I'm really beginning to think about the trickle-down effect, Joe, that's going to have in terms of economic development for cities, right? So there's always this notion that the state said that this would be great revenue for the city, in particular in terms of taxes, right? And the taxes that could generate from the betting and from the wages that the citizens earn could then go back to the state to provide schooling and construction and whatever else the state may need to fund it. And so, Joe, we know that sports has always been a great economic factor when it comes to that. When you were with the Detroit Pistons, Joe, is that something that you guys worked with in terms of city officials, in terms of the economic impact that you guys were having on the city, and then helping to really shape the narrative of development around the city in terms of schools and communities that could really benefit from a team such as Detroit Pistons being there in the city?
Yeah, and what you do is what you want to do with something like that, Mike, is look, you have this platform as a professional sports organization in a city. You have this platform as a professional athlete, coach, what have you. And, Mike, when you have that platform, man, you certainly don't want to waste it simply on just playing basketball, running up and down a court. What you want to do is impact as many people as possible, especially kids out there who are looking up to these athletes and looking up to these teams. And so, yes, you get with city officials, and what you try to do is figure out what's the biggest impact that we can have and what's the most kids that we can reach while we're having this impact. And that's where you start looking for causes to get involved with, to put money into, to put resources, to put time into, because that platform for a young athlete is, if he's lucky, it's 10 years. And so it's not that long. But while you have that platform, man, do good when you have it. You know what I mean? Do good when you have that platform.
I'm with you with that, Joe. And your point just now brings me to a 60-minute special that I watched recently where they had Giannis, the NBA player from the Milwaukee Bucks on. They really did a profile on him. They really talked about how they're building a new arena, essentially, and they're calling it the house that Giannis built, right? Just in terms of the impact that he's having on the sport, and in terms of the impact that he's having on Milwaukee in terms of economics and how they're selling out, season tickets in ways that they've never been before. And it was really surreal for me to watch this immigrant story really from Greece, who's able to have such a great economic impact from just one individual. Joe, as you begin to work with your new signees, as they begin to enter into this moment and to fulfill their dreams that they've had since the age of 5, and as you begin to coach and mentor, even when you were with the Detroit Pistons, do you really impart in them the responsibility that, not so much the responsibility, but the magnitude that surrounds them and the potential impact they can have on a development of a city and on society and on culture?
Yeah, I think especially when I was in the front office, so many young guys, they come in, and a lot of times my guys want to do right, they want to do good, but they don't really understand the process of how to do it. And for me, it was really good to be able to sit down with with guys like Chauncey Billups and Rasheed Wallace and Ben Wallace and all these different guys and talk to these guys about how they could impact the city. And, guys, here's what I did. I got involved with Children's Hospital of Michigan, and it became my cause for years and years and years there. And both of my kids had spent time in Children's Hospital, so it was a personal thing for me. So I told these guys, I said, look, man, there has to be a cause that's close to your heart. That's something that you're passionate about. And look, you have to start reaching people and touching people. God forbid that you come into this league, you play for however many years you play, and the only thing people can say is he could really shoot a basketball. I said, man, you've wasted an opportunity that you're not going to get back, because you're never going to be a 25-year-old athlete that's popular, that people are seeing again. And don't waste this opportunity. So I would impart that on all the guys that came through, Mike. For years and years, I pull guys aside and talk to them about this very thing that you're talking about right now.
Joe, I couldn't have thought of a better person to really help and to really shape this narrative of this conversation, is because, as you know, Joe, on the Mike Muse Show, we like to highlight all the policies that are impacting our lifestyle and things that we love, which is sports, music, film, fashion, and technology. And just this discourse that we're having right now, we're showing how the Supreme Court and policy and legislation is having an impact on our culture, on our states, on our cities. And before I let you go, Joe, just in one thought, and I hear you talking right now in terms of the philanthropic side, if you will, in terms of what can happen in our cities. Do you feel now that some of the younger players that are coming into the league now, do you feel like they are more open to talk about political discourse, or do you feel they're still a little bit more hesitant and just want to just play the sport itself? Because that is something that we're seeing in our society, kind of this pull, if you will.
I think what you see right now, Mike, is there are more platforms for you to see where guys are talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if no one did an interview with you 20 years ago about these social issues, then no one probably would know what your thoughts were. But you don't have to wait for an interview anymore. You can post whatever you want, with your own social media platforms, So I think that the fact that there are more platforms to get your message out there, whatever your personal message is, I think that's what you're seeing more. I think guys have always been passionate about a lot of these issues. Like I said, Mike, the way media was set up 20 years ago, if I don't come on the Mike Muse Show, if I don't sit down and do an interview, and that particular person doesn't ask me about these social issues, then very good chance that the public would never really know where I stood on those issues.
Yeah. Joe, man, I cannot thank you enough. I do not want to keep any more of your time. I know it is a big week for you, Joe. I am rooting for ISC and all the talent that you guys have coming up, and rooting for that you guys get all the picks and selections that you guys are hoping for, Joe. And I hope that you will come on and talk to us and again, Joe, about any social issues and any cool athletic discourse that you may feel the need. And Joe, if you don't mind giving out just the website for your agency so people can kind of follow you and what you're doing and what the company's doing, and follow some of your athletes too as well, because you guys have just more than just basketball. You guys have baseball, and you guys have football as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's ISC Sports, ISC.com. Any of those, you hit any of those, and you can go straight to our website, and you can see who are the players that we represent, who are the players that we represent here at ISC. So Mike, I love being on your show, man. It's great. It's informative. It's cool, and would love to be back on whenever you have me back, Mike.
Oh, man, anytime, Joe. You have an open invitation. Thank you, Joe. Go get him this week, my friend.
All right, Mike.
All right, take care. Citizens, please stay with us. As always, tweet us at IAMMIKEMUSE. That's IAMMIKEMUSE, MUSE as in Sam E. And also here at Insight at SXM Insight. And we'll be right back continuing this conversation further.
I don't care if the sun don't shine. I do my drinking in the evening time when I'm in Las Vegas.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and what a fantastic conversation that was with Joe Dumars. A little secret, I am from the state of Michigan, so having Joe Dumars on the Mike Muse Show was really something special, as I had the chance to really witness the bad boy era of the Pistons and see how they really shaped the state, the impact they had on the city, the impact they had on culture. And so I was totally trying not to fan out. I hope it didn't come out that way that I had Joe on, man. But what an incredible guy. And I have another incredible guy coming on to the Mike Muse Show, who is absolutely perfect for this conversation. He goes by the name of David Strow. David Strow is the Vice President of Corporate Communications for Boyd Gaming Corporation. And people, if you don't know about Boyd Gaming Casinos, let me tell you a little bit about them. They were founded in 1975, approximately 43 years ago. They are one of the largest casino operators in the United States. People, they have 24 casinos in seven U.S. states. And by the end of the year, they project to have 29 casinos in 10 states. And what's interesting about them, and the reason I really want to talk to David, is that there's something unique about them, where they actually operate one of the largest sports book networks in the state of Nevada. They also have the deepest experience in sports betting in the industry. They've been doing sports betting since they opened in 1975. And what's also interesting, and you heard me talk about in the intro, we're talking about, different entrepreneurial aspects and ways to get into the sports betting, if you will, and that kind of comes from online platforms, and they are already offering mobile sports betting already. And so I couldn't think of a better person, a better company to come on and really talk about this than David. How are you today, my friend?
Doing well, Mike. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Did I get everything right about you guys?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Welcome to the Mike Muse Show, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. You didn't tell me you were going to have me come on after a legend like Joe Dumars, man. That's a lot of pressure.
Well, listen, I am betting on you, David, that you can handle that. See what I did right there?
Absolutely. Very good. Very good.
Very good. So let me just start out the question, man. How are you feeling after this new ruling by the Supreme Court, man? Are you guys popping the bottles of champagne in your offices now as you guys think about the expansion of your enterprise and new revenue sources? Talk to me. How did you feel when the Supreme Court released that decision?
I don't know if necessarily we're popping the champagne, but, it is an exciting time for us. This is a big growth opportunity for us. I mean, you did a pretty good job of covering it. We've been offering sports betting at our Nevada casinos for over 40 years now, and we have one of the largest sportsbook networks in the state. So what this ruling basically means is now we have potentially 9 additional opportunities across the country to put that experience to work. I mean, now that obviously is going to depend on what individual states do, but we have a lot of potential opportunities over the coming years to put that experience to work and to offer a new amenity to our customers across the country.
How has sports betting been in the state of Nevada right now? Has it been a major source of revenue? And you can speak broadly, not just for Boyd Gaming, but just across the board in the state of Nevada. How has sports betting been, and is there a need to feel excited for some of those, Boyd, who haven't been in the industry for 43 years? Is it a worthwhile business possibly for those to start thinking about? Because I'm sure people's entrepreneurial minds are racing right now.
Yeah, sure. Now, I mean, in terms of the grand context of things, in terms of our casino operations, it's a fraction of that. I mean, it is not at the level of, say, slot machines or table games. This is in the single-digit percentage-wise in terms of total revenue for a Nevada casino. But what I would say is what sports betting really has done in Nevada is it's a traffic generator, traffic driver. People come to our casinos to place a bet, and once they are in the building, they will spend money in other areas of the business. You'll see that really during major sporting events. I think to the Super Bowl, but more specifically to something like March Madness. I mean, during those 2-3 days to open the tournament in March, our sports books will be absolutely packed with sports fans who are coming specifically to watch the games. They'll come from all over the country to watch games in our sports books. So that really is – so there's 2 ways to think about this. One is a revenue opportunity to grow the business, but more broadly, it's another way to draw people and get people into the building. And really, at the end of the day, I think that's where a lot of the growth potential lies for gaming companies.
Now, since you guys already have a structure in place and you guys already have 24 casinos, because right now when we think about sports betting, we naturally just gravitate towards Las Vegas. And in some parts, Atlantic City now that has become legalized, if you will. But for the other states who aren't close to Nevada, who don't have access to Las Vegas, a lot of us have been able to, participate, if you will, through these different office pools, if you will, or just casually betting with our friends and our family now. Is that what you see as, I wouldn't necessarily your competition in terms of like your fantasy leagues, if you will, but can you now see those entities as competition now for gaming companies?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, the American Gaming Association has done a very interesting estimate on this. According to their estimates, if you include all those office pools, home betting, bookies, what have you, all of that betting activity nationwide adds up to about $150 billion a year. Being wagered every single year, some in one form or another, on sports betting. Nevada is about 2% of that, so it's a tiny sliver of this overall activity that's going on across the country. So, I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily need that whole $150 billion to migrate into legal sports books. Even a fraction of that represents a pretty significant expansion of our business. And I would say that, you talk about, home wagering or things like that. I mean, I don't think it's competition any more than, say, playing a game of poker at home is competition with the poker rooms at your local casino. They're just two different products. So, but I do think that a lot of that activity that you're seeing today will start to migrate over to legal sports books. I do see that happening in the years ahead.
Now, what's interesting about this is you mentioned online poker, if you will, and what I find interesting, and what you're going to know about me, David, as we continue the conversation, as we get to know each other, is that I'm a big proponent of entrepreneurship. It's one of my biggest platforms I advocate for on radio, off radio, on TV, off TV. And as we begin to think about whether or not individuals can start their online sports betting gaming systems, if you will, there's something to keep in mind, citizens out there who are listening, is that even in certain, you have to be mindful of which state you're doing your commerce in for the bets to take place. Because if you're doing commerce in a state online that has not legalized sports betting, you will not be able to participate in that. But David, that kind of plays to your strength, though, because you guys are already in states already, and you guys already are looking to expand your casino operation. So you guys have to be thinking about it from that component of you guys are a leg up, if you will, on whatever competition that you may be coming down the road for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, sports betting will work like other forms of casino gaming in the United States, which is it will be decided on a state-by-state basis. And so for a company looking to be involved in this business, you want to have operations in as many different states as possible, because that gives you multiple different opportunities to enter that business. And to touch on what you talked about, mobile betting, because I think that's an important point, because this isn't really a future product. This is a product that exists today. We have an app that we call Be Connected Sports. You download it to an iPhone or an Android phone, and you make a deposit at one of our 10 Nevada sports books. And as long as you are within the state of Nevada, the borders of the state of Nevada, you can place a bet from your phone. From any place in the state of Nevada. So that's a product that we've had for several years now. So it's a product that exists today. It is a very common product in the state of Nevada, and we've seen a good amount of sports wagering migrate over to that platform. So this is clearly, you talk about entrepreneurship and moving away from different forms of gaming. Sports betting, it looks a lot different than what I think people sometimes think of. They think of these massive, gigantic sports books with these 40-foot walls of television boards. And those still operate in Nevada. Don't get me wrong. They are still in Nevada. We operate a number of them at our properties. But I think that as sports betting moves to other states, it may look different. I mean, you will see states build a product that is tailored for what they are looking for, what their customers are looking for, what makes sense in that state. So we shouldn't necessarily think of a Nevada or a Las Vegas super sports book plopping down in communities around the country. That may not happen. It may look much different than what they have today, and it'll be tailored to what makes sense for that state.
I love how you actually brought in the wall, if you will, a gigantic wall, and I know what you're talking about, but sometimes when I think about like sports bookies, I kind of go to that dark side that Joe Dumars was talking about earlier, and I think about like a guy in like a leather jacket with like his notebook writing down numbers and collecting money is like in a brown bag, and so those days are definitely long gone, and so but that's something that kind of comes to mind. Are you hearing within the gaming community in the ways that, because you just brought up something really interesting in terms of it's going to look different from a state-by-state basis, are you guys even looking at it in terms of it becoming detached from an actual physical casino altogether?
That's, those are some of the different paths that different states may look at. It may be that a state decides to move with the traditional model, which is you have to actually move into the casino to place a wager. It may be a purely online form of wagering, as you've seen in other countries. And it may be the hybrid that we spoke about, which is a mobile app which requires you to enter the casino to place a deposit. I mean, there are many different routes this could go, and I think it's still kind of premature to say what forms we'll see in the U.S. But obviously we will monitor those pretty closely. We need to be prepared for any number of potential routes.
I actually like how you said that in terms of it being in different countries, if you will. As I was talking with Joe about in terms of like league owners, if you will. Take for Mark Cuban, for example, who's backed an esports startup who does a lot with the cryptocurrency space, right? And their outlook on it is that, look, sports betting takes place in over 118 countries already. And so they're already there in using the esports model with cryptocurrency, right? And so this dovetails perfectly to what you're saying, David, in terms of different ways and models and revenue sources that could be created from this. And we'd even bring into the crypto space. David, how do you guys, as in the gaming industry, deal with your elected officials? Are you guys in constant communication because of the regulations that are involved? Are you guys constantly talking with your elected officials in terms of understanding it to create better policies for the gaming in order to create a better experience for the consumers?
Well, I don't think there's any industry or company in America that doesn't speak to their lawmakers. Now, I think you hit on the point, which is we are a very tightly regulated industry, and so we're always mindful of that. I mean, look, I think our approach to this is we have a lot of expertise in the area of legal, regulated sports betting. And so if lawmakers want our perspective on the matter, we're certainly happy to offer that. I mean, at the end of the day, lawmakers need to make the decision that they believe are in the best interest of their state. They know their state best. They know what their constituents are looking for. And so at the end of the day, it's their decision to make. What we can offer is our perspective, what we've seen in Nevada over the last 43 years, and what we think would be most appropriate. What has worked and what hasn't, I think, is the best way to put it.
Well, David, you have queued me up perfectly for our next guest. And David, you're going to stick around with me too as well. Our next guest to come up on the Mike Muse Show is Assemblyman Benji Wimberly. Sorry about that, Assemblyman, from the great state of New Jersey. And David, the reason why I thought it was important to have this Assemblyman on is because New Jersey is the one who actually filed the lawsuit against the Supreme Court in order to allow sports betting to happen for their great state. Assemblyman Wimberly, how are you today?
I'm good. We're actually in our budget meetings now, so I had to step out for a few minutes. I know I committed to the call. So, New Jersey is on track, and obviously we got started last Thursday.
Well, I appreciate you for taking time, man, to come on. We've been in a great conversation with Joe Dumars and David Strow, Vice President and Boyd Gaming over in Las Vegas. I'm just going to get right to it then, Assemblyman. Why did New Jersey want this so bad? Why has this been over an 8-year ordeal? Why did you guys want to take it all the way to the Supreme Court? And why were you guys so big on being first in order to actually legalize it and put it into practical use with your Governor Murphy, actually placing the $20 bets on Thursday for the World Cup?
I mean, the one is the job creation. Sports betting will create, jobs for the residents of New Jersey. Also, the revenue. Obviously, every year we're in a battle to keep our property taxes at a affordable rate for our residents, and the anticipated revenue will help that and help other programs along the way.
Are you guys have any program in terms of like for entrepreneurship growth? Is that part of the whole economic development plan? I know that part of the legislation is that there's only allowed certain amount of licenses to be operable when it comes to that. So when you talk about economic development, are you talking just along the lines of Atlantic City, or are you guys talking about economic development throughout the entire state of New Jersey, or just those in close proximity to your racetracks in Atlantic City?
I think eventually throughout the state of New Jersey. So you're talking about Monmouth, you're talking about Atlantic City now, and as you see an expansion, I think you will see additional jobs, and not just through the sports betting, in particular the parlors, but the restaurant business, the hotel business. All these things will have create an economic influx for these areas and the state overall.
Now, I know a lot of the lottery always is usually earmarked for education, and you guys just roll out and you build up to having the amount of time that you guys have had to really fight this system, if you will. Have you guys begin to earmark where you would like some of the taxes to go from the wages that you guys will be shelling out, if you will, from the winners?
No, not yet. I haven't been made familiar with any of that, as of today. But like I said, this is relatively new to us, so I'm anticipating that we will be filled on some of the general revenue outside of it going to the general fund. That there will be other areas in the budget that it will definitely have an impact on.
Here at the Mike Muse Show, Simply Ben, we really like to cover and really peel back the layers in terms of how our democracy gets to work for us through the lens of lifestyle, sports, music, film, fashion, and technology. And I think one of the most underestimated plays within our democracy is our state legislator in our state house. And essentially, this movement was kind of helped stirred through the New Jersey state legislator. As you guys are going through this process and getting it to, at the time, Governor Christie and your state attorney general, what was your responses like to the league, such as the NFL, such as the NCAA, such as the MLB, all those who made statements and said that this compromises the integrity of the sport, and especially in particular the NCAA? What type of conversation did you guys have around that to counter that narrative?
Well, I mean, for every professional sport team that wasn't in support of it, you had the laborers in support of it, you had the casinos in support of it, you had in particular an area that we know, Atlantic City, that was in great support of it. You have the racetracks that were in great support of it, the breeders, you name it, they were in support of it. So I mean, that alone said that there was a compromise. I mean, one of the main issues when you talk about betting, we want to make sure, of course, in this bill that you have to be 21 years old or older to bet. You can be part of any of the sports teams. There will be no betting, as some people thought, in high school sports or anything along that nature. So, I mean, I think we put everything in there to make it a prosperous and big thing for the state of New Jersey moving forward.
And David, I'm bringing to the conversation as we have to let the Simpleman go, but something just for the last question, if you will, and in terms of casinos often, and I've been involved in the political discourse with politicals who often think about casinos as a revenue and economic solution for their cities and for their states. But there always is this backlash, if you will, in a sense of, does it have an impact on the working class, if you will? What is the position that you guys have when it comes to that quagmire, if you will, in terms of those negatively affected will be those in the working class who are aiming to use betting as a way out of their circumstance?
I mean, that's a concern anywhere. I mean, be it the, daily lottery or, be it the casinos that we have now. We've had online betting opportunities now for the residents of New Jersey, and that hasn't come up as a major issue. I think anytime, I think you have to put safety nets in place for these people who do, abuse it. It's no different than any other thing that people become addicted to. So I don't see that as a problem. I think the same people that have issues in the past who were betting illegally, on illegal betting, systems, this in turn will probably save them somewhat from getting caught up into situations that can really have a negative impact on their lives.
Well, Simpleman, I know you're pressed for time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day and the budget negotiation right now to have a conversation with us. Thank you, and we look forward to being in conversation with you in the future.
Take care. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you. David, that brings me back to you. As you guys, that question, I'd like to bring it to you because that is an argument that is had in terms of the negative impact that casinos and gambling has on communities, and particularly those who are on the margins, right, and who feel disenfranchised. And so as you guys are having conversations and you guys are looking to expand your reach into these new states coming up throughout the year, how are you guys reconciling that conversation? Are you guys in conversations with community partners, community organizations, community leaders, as well as politicals as you guys go into these different cities?
So I think the way we would look at it is we view gaming, casino gaming, as a form of entertainment. We think that's the best way to look at this, and should be put within a budget. So obviously, if you don't have the funds to spend on a discretionary form of entertainment, you shouldn't be doing it. Now, having said that, saying what you've been saying in terms of those who may take it too far, that is a problem for some people. But interestingly, it is about the studies that we've seen. That's about 1% of the U.S. population. And interestingly, it doesn't really vary a whole heck of a lot based on how close you are to a legal casino, which in the end of the day, if you think about it, the issue is, if you have this problem, as I think the Assemblyman was getting at, you will find an outlet for it. If it could be a legal casino. If that's not available to you, there are illegal bookies. There are lotteries. There's even day trading, which is, it can be a way to address that. So that's kind of how I would approach it. I mean, obviously it's an issue that we are concerned about, and we're in conversations with and support groups that address it, whether they would be the National Council on Responsible Gaming, the Nevada Council on Problem Gambling, or organizations like that are conducting research and providing resources to get people who get resources to those who need help. So certainly it's an issue we're looking at.
Absolutely. Now, as we conclude the conversation, David, I want you to be able to think about the one thing that you're most excited about as a result of the Supreme Court decision. But before we go to that point, though, as I think about where we are now in terms of sports now is becoming one of the greatest entertainment platforms of our time, right? And not just the NBA, but the NFL, NHL, the MLB. There's so many sports having this new sense of excitement, if you will, because of all the different platforms and digital platforms now where you can have access to content. And now, even as Joe mentioned, there's so many different platforms now to hear from our players and from our athletes, where before we had to wait for SportsCenter to come on during that one time to really get the interviews from our players. But now we feel so much more connected to our players because of social media. Do you believe now that sports betting now is becoming legal, as the states become and make it legal, will be a great companion piece to, one, our engagement with the sports, two, with our connection that we have to the players, and then three, with the game in of itself?
Well, certainly that's a good point regarding the potential of sports. I mean, in Las Vegas, we are certainly discovering that currently. I mean, we just had our professional sports team, the Vegas Golden Knights, competed for the Stanley Cup in their very first season, and I think that just injected an enormous amount of energy into our community. I mean, you'd have to be here to fully appreciate how special that was to our community. And then in a couple of years, the Raiders will be coming to Las Vegas. So certainly that's something that's very much on our radar right now. I would say, in terms of your question of a complementary, I think March Madness is an absolute perfect example of that, what we see. We see folks coming in from all across the country, making special trips to Las Vegas to watch March Madness. They come every year for those 3 or 4 days of the first two rounds to watch games all day, place some bets on a whole bunch of games, but just to come in and enjoy the experience. It really enhances this tournament for them. It's an annual trip and an annual pilgrimage they make to enjoy the tournament. And so I think that's a good example of how responsible wagering can help complement professional sports or amateur sports, or just the experience of watching sports, is having that stake in a game. So certainly we've seen that, and I think that's something you will start to see in other markets around the country.
Let me tell you, when you said injecting excitement into the city, you literally injected excitement into our studio with one of our producers. Christine literally pumped her hands in the air when you talked about the Vegas Knights. So we're big hockey fans here in the Mike Muse Show in our studio.
We love the Golden Knights here in Vegas, man. I mean, that team just really captured the heart of this city. I've been here for over 20 years now, and I have never really seen anything like it. Vegas is a transitory community in many ways. It has that reputation. This was something that brought everyone together, made us proud to be part of the Las Vegas community. It was really something very special, and we're very excited, very proud of their performance, and hopefully we have some more cracks at the Stanley Cup in the years to come.
Well, man, we are rooting for you, David, and the Vegas Knights. We wish you luck in whatever business model that you guys have coming down the pipeline. And, David, please feel free to come back to the Mike Muse Show and really talk to us as your new business ventures and revenues and models begin to change and take shape. And as you guys enter new states, we would love to have this conversation with you. In particular, in terms of, you brought up something interesting, gave me an idea for an episode, I think, down the road in terms of how having a sports team can build community. So thank you so much for your time. But, David, before you go, is there a social media if somebody wants to tweet you, they can reach out to you and ask you more questions, or is there a website that people can go to find out more information about Boyd Gaming?
Just our website, boydgaming.com. We are on the internet. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. So we welcome people's input and interest in our company. We hope they'll be visiting us soon. Thank
you so much, David. Have a great day, my friend.
You too. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was an awesome conversation that we just had. And like I said before, I came in without having an opinion on this topic. I just wanted to just ask questions I was curious about from three different individuals who represent the three different key sectors around this issues. And that's the sports aspect with Joe Dumars, it's the gaming aspect with David Strum, and it is the political aspect with Assemblyman Benji Wimberly. Those issues are really what comes to light and is really the heartbeat of the Mike Muse Show, and to really peel the layers back and show just how powerful our one vote can be, our one voice can be, and just how beneficial it is if you just take that one issue, that one thing that you really care about and really want to advocate for it. I mean, this literally started off as, I'm sure this wasn't one person who was interested in gambling and betting, but it was probably a group of people who showed an interest, and they really just lobbied their state legislators. They really lobbied the governor. They really lobbied the Secretary General, and they held court for 8 years in order for this to be pulled off. So as you think about it, what is that one issue that you guys care the most about? I know in terms of politics, and we have this political discourse, is always the big tent topics such as taxes, such as healthcare, such as education reform, and all those are important too as well. But it literally comes down to, do you like shopping at the mall, or do you prefer shopping on Amazon, or do you prefer shopping any different aspect online? And there is a way that could be advocated for that, and there is a way for that to happen in your local communities, right? Do you like drinking wine? Do you like drinking rosé? I use this example all the time. There is literally a wine caucus in DC that can help make the price of your wine and your beer cheaper. I know that's a trivial point, but it just goes to show that whatever your issue is, let that be important. Let that come to the forefront of it, and don't let another group of others, individuals, put their ideas ahead of yours, right? So just be more targeted, be more streamlined, and really recognize the power of you zoning in just on one issue that you care about coming up in the midterm elections and in 2020 and just in any other time period when we're not casting our ballots. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for coming back with me on the Mike Muse Show. As always, you can tweet me at IAMMIKEMUSE. That's MUS as in Sam E. You can also find us at SXM Insight. It is always a pleasure talking to you. Keep the tweets coming, man. I see them coming in already. I'm going to start responding right now as we speak, man. Let's just keep the conversation going. 1 hour just isn't enough, folks. Until next time, man, have a great day.
Cars really are all about style, design, speed, passion.
I'm Daron Levine, host of In the Driver's Seat on Sirius XM Insight. In the Driver's Seat is about cars, number one.
We're going to bring experts to tell you about what's happening in the automobile industry.
Americans are all about freedom.
Cars are the greatest expression of the people we want to be.
In the Driver's Seat with award-winning automotive journalist Daron Levine. Saturdays at noon East on Sirius XM Insight Channel 121. Or listen on your phone when you get out of the car with the Sirius XM app.